Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me share a quote with you. The great Les Brown once said, "You can't see the picture when you're in the frame." If you felt stuck in your fitness, mindset, or life as a whole, head down to the link in the show notes and reach out to learn more about Project Endure Coaching so that we can help you step outside of the frame and bridge the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. We can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. This episode does not have a number. This episode is a bonus episode. This is a special episode, and you will soon understand why. I have with me an incredibly amazing, special, almost unbelievable guest tonight. Someone I've known for a while now, and someone I'm very excited to talk to, James Boria. James, what's up, man?
What's going on, Joe?
James, 2 days ago, you broke a world record. I don't even know where to begin. Why don't we start with this? What was the world record? Give us the details. We can go through that, and then we'll just rewind all the way to the beginning.
Yeah, so the world record, two world records. The first world record that I broke was the fastest bear crawl marathon, which was previously held by Devin LeVake, who did it in 20 hours and 48 minutes. I broke that record in by about 2 hours. I completed it in 18 hours and 44 minutes. And then I completed the longest known bear crawl, which was 31.07 miles in 23 hours and I believe 26 minutes.
And eight seconds.
8 seconds. All I know was under 24 hours. That was my goal. So those are the two.
So we'll get into all the details of everything, but I just want to start by saying, we planned this out. It had been a while. We'd been talking about this. And for context, James and I worked together in a coaching capacity. James and I started working together about 14 or so months ago, and we started working together to build a personal brand for James to get clear on life. Bear crawl was not mentioned once in the beginning, and I did not know what I was getting myself into, but soon we started talking about the bear crawl. It was mentioned here or there. I didn't really understand, and over time that was all we talked about up until the day of. And I have to say, as much as we talked about it, as much as we planned for it, as much as I was excited to be a part of it, I did not understand what it was going to be, not only until we were in it, but until it was over. And I'm curious if you had a similar experience.
Yeah, there was no way we could have ever planned for what we went through. There was no way I could have planned for what I was going to go through. The whole thing just spun on its head beautifully, I think, though. I don't think any of it was bad. I think you can't plan for something that takes that long of a time period. But I did mention it to you in the coaching form that we filled out. And it was the same day. It was like the most nervous I've ever been. Devin actually posted a story for a social media manager, and I just like blindly applied. And it was the same day that I had the coaching call with you. And I wrote in Devin's application, he was like, "Why would you be fit for the job?" And I told him I was going to break his record. And then he went to my Instagram and liked one of my videos. So I was all freaking out that he liked my video. And then it was my first time meeting you and what you were going to say. But yeah, we didn't really talk about the bear crawl at all, or even how to train for it or anything like that until a couple months later, when I guess we kind of got clear on my brand, but I guess even we're still not really clear on it. It's kind of just an ugly mess, but yeah, it's been a long road.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think that what I meant by that was your mom had really connected us. And your mom, shout out to her, and we'll talk about her, I'm sure, but What an amazing human being. And I'm so grateful that she connected us. But when she connected us, I was under the impression that we were going to work on personal brand and clarity. And then, yes, you did mention that in the beginning. And I honestly didn't really understand what that was early on. And it took me a while to kind of grasp onto the bear crawl thing. But let's rewind because over the past few days, I've gotten a lot of questions. I'm sure you've gotten way more questions. Why did you do this?
This is actually a question I haven't gotten recently. It's a question I've gotten over the past 16 months. Now, I think people can understand why, or people that have been asking why. So I don't really get much of those questions anymore. But why is really, I just wanted to be somebody that I was proud of. In kind of a deep sense, I was coming off of a college baseball career that just didn't go as I planned it to go. And I was not happy with who I was as a person. I couldn't look myself in the mirror and be proud of who I was. And I just really wanted to make a deep change. And it never started out as a bear crawl. I think people just assumed, or they assume I was just like, I'm going to set out and break this record. That was never how it was. I actually watched Devin. I didn't watch him do the bear crawl that he did, but I watched some of his training clips and then came back to it months after he did it. So I didn't even really look into the event. I wasn't in love with it until I became somebody that I was proud of. And it's a long journey, but I, was out of shape my senior year of college. I was able to go back to Franklin Pierce University for my grad year. And once that happened, I was like dead set on getting in the best shape of my life and just showing up for the people that I thought I let down over the previous years as a captain. And as people who listen to this podcast, I'm sure know, once you go down that self-development path, it's just a snowball. And I had a conversation the other night about how athletes lose purpose after they're done with their careers. And I had that moment, but I was fortunate enough to lose it and be able to get my career back. So I kind of knew what was going to happen in 6 months. Once I already turned my life around again, I knew I was going to start from zero again. And this time I was prepared for it. So I ended up running the 4x4x48, which is a Goggins challenge. I never ran before. And I just loved the way it felt to be somebody that people looked at like there's something fucking wrong with that guy, you know? And I just loved it. And then I remembered Devin and I listened to a podcast where he challenged someone to break his record. I not even seriously, just kind of joking around, told my buddy, like, dude, I'm going to bear crawl a marathon. And he told me, he was like, dude, you should bear crawl 26.3 miles. And it really checked me. And I was just like, I need to start seeing myself the way other people see me because I kind of said this as a joke. I wasn't serious, but he thinks I could do it. And I said, fuck it. I'm just going to tell people that I'm going to do this. And I still wasn't even like seriously committed to it, but I would joke around and say, I feel so good. I could bear crawl a marathon. And I would just keep talking about it. And then once my career was done and I got home from college, it was the only thing I had. It was the only thing that I was like, this is the one thing I've told people I'm going to do. It's the one thing I'm really looking forward to. Why not chase it? And that's why not be that guy? I just visualize myself all the time. Like, what if that was me? What if I could be that guy that Devin acknowledges and I could stand next to Devin and be great? What if that could be me? And then that was the why. I always saw myself as that person after I told people I was going to do it. So it wasn't about, I didn't even think about, how to tape my hands or how cool the record would be or anything logistical wise. Like we planned that like 3 weeks ago.
Mhm.
None of it crossed my mind besides what would it feel like if I could have that record? And that's why I did it.
So, would it be fair to say that you told people you were going to do it before you fully believed you would do it yourself?
I didn't believe I was going to do it for a long time. And I had plenty of doubts, that, along the way. And the only time, I'll be completely honest, the only time that I really knew I was going to do it was when I finished it.
Hmm.
Uh, there was even moments during the crawl where I doubted it, and I was super scared. Um, but I just I never gave those words or those thoughts a voice, and just the accountability kept me in it. But yeah, I never really fully believed or fully knew that I was going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to what was going through your head during the crawl itself, but okay, so you decide you're going to do this. And in the beginning, it's not the 31.07, correct?
No.
Where along the path did that change?
I think it was around November of 2021. Um, Jesus, so a different year, but um, so it was when I started to get more comfortable with training and it was actually going to happen. In my mind, it was always going to happen. But if you ask me, how is this going to happen? I could barely tell you how it was going to happen. I just knew one day I was going to be on a street corner somewhere. Someone was going 3, 2, 1, and I was going to go. So I said, well, I might as well get it verified by Guinness. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to put all this work in. And I went to check Guinness and there was no record for bear crawl marathon. And it's been I think as competitors, and I'll say this openly on the podcast. I don't know if Devin will hear this or not, but I think just naturally as competitors, and when you put a lot of time and effort into things, you start to demonize the person that holds the record or holds something that you want. And I never knew him. I never met him. I never spoke to him. But during the whole process, I could never ever disrespect or take away from Devin's accomplishment. He inspired me to do something incredible. He took uncertain steps when he did that bear crawl. And in my eyes, that's his record. Even if it's not verified, he did it. He put the idea would have never been anything if it wasn't for him. So I didn't believe I could have never been the person to, just say, well, whatever, he never said it. I'm just going to go out and do it in 25 hours instead. And it'll be my record. No big deal. I can take the cake. That didn't feel honorable to me. He doesn't deserve that. And I deserve better than to just mail it in. And so I was kind of lost for a little bit. I knew I wasn't going to do the 26.2, or I was going to figure out how I could potentially maybe set the record and then give it back if I didn't do it in the time that I wanted to, or Devin's time, that is. And then I was working or trying to work with a couple brands for the crawl, pitching them the idea. And one of the people I was connected with was like, why don't you just do a bear crawl ultra marathon instead of becoming the second person to do a bear crawl marathon? And I was like, no way, dude, I'm not doing that. That's bananas. I'm not bear crawling like 50 miles. And he was like, it's really like 31 miles. It's only 5 miles more. And I was just like, well, that doesn't sound too bad. And if by that point it's probably all just going to be a mesh, like a big mess, why not? And that saves the day. That will allow me to go into this with a clean head and feel like I'm not disrespecting somebody who I idolize. And I can write my own story. And so that's why I chose that and then ended up doing that.
Yeah. So, all right, you make the decision. We're working together. We're starting to talk more and more about the crawl. All right. I think a lot of people would assume that training was dialed in the whole time, clear, purposeful. You're shaking your head. No. So let's talk about the training aspect. When was the first time you crawled?
The first mile I crawled was in June of last year. And I started within like 20-minute chunks. I think the first time I crawled was a mile because I wanted to see if I could do a mile. And looking back now, it actually didn't take me that long. It took me 47 minutes because I've seen a couple other people do some miles during my training, and it's taken them significantly longer. Um, but yeah, I started training in June, and then I hit the ground running like really heavy, kind of burnt myself out, fizzled out in the middle where I did barely any crawling, and then really turned it up towards the end. Um, I was doing anything just to get me to that start line.
Yeah. And our conversations throughout continued to come back to the fact that there really is no blueprint for anything like this. And I was trying to come at this with a marathon training block approach where we were going to build up volume and never get to the actual distance, but just make sure that your body was prepared. You had some opinions from other people, and we were weighing all of those things together in addition to how you were feeling physically. And the whole thing was a lot of up and down, back and forth, pushing maybe a little bit too much, pulling back, crawling a lot, not crawling at all, cross training, trying to figure it all out. And on top of that, behind the scenes, you're trying to figure out your life. And it's not like from the very beginning, the bear crawl was it, and that you were just at home training, eating, sleeping. there's work to be done. There's, how do I make a living? There's what's next after the crawl that's going through your mind. So let's start with kind of the work aspect. And so, what were you doing from the beginning of this crawl training for work?
So I was a personal trainer. Um, I had a plan to work for one of my good friends who owned a gym back here in Long Island when I first got out of college. And so I was doing that, and I was spending a lot of time in the gym setting. I was training. I wasn't really training a lot of people. It was more of like a open gym setting. So I had a bunch of athletes on the floor at one time, and I would move from athlete to athlete. And then I moved to a couple of different places, but I was personal training
Mhm.
for the majority of the time. I think I stopped working, I think about 2 months out. But yeah,
Yeah.
personal training.
So some of our coaching calls happened, you're sitting on the ground, you'd hear the ding of a metal baseball bat hitting the ball in the background, and those were good times. And I think it's important for people to know that not only did we not have the crawl training figured out, I don't think we really had life figured out at all. Like it was.
And I still don't.
Mhm.
I still don't. It was get to this point and reevaluate. And everything was pivot around making sure that I stick to my word and bear crawl. Everything was second. Friendships were second. Job was second. Family was second. Everything was second. It's every single decision we made, and that was something that you helped me with was priorities, right? I think a lot of people don't achieve their goals because put they don't make them the priority, and we just always made that a priority. That was the number one priority. It was bear crawl was 1A, or bear crawl was just one, and job was number two, and everything else was extra at that point. So yeah, I remember those calls. Freaking little kids running in the background. Yeah, it was wild
Yeah.
from some car.
Hmm. And so at some point throughout that process, you actually decided to move to Massachusetts, and to start your own gym, a physical space. And that was a big decision that I don't think necessarily went as planned, like most things.
Right.
Um, and so tell us a little bit about that season. And then that season obviously led into the few months leading up to the crawl, where you came home and then made the crawl the only thing on your plate.
Yeah. This was one of the bigger lessons I learned during the process. And I think it was a tough lesson to learn. It was a definitely very stressful one. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of training. But I think it was a very valuable one. That you have to keep the goal, and you can't balance two things that require every ounce of your energy. Being a business owner sounds cool, but it's not cool. Um, at least when you're trying to start it. And I couldn't give it the attention that it needed. Um, but where was I? So I ended up meeting my business partner who wanted me to go and start my business in Massachusetts. He wanted someone to run a gym, and me being me at that point, like I said, the self development, David Goggins, all these people mentality kicks in, and it's what you just fall back on, and you want to weigh your regrets, right? You want to look at the end of your life and say, like, at least I took the chance to do these things. And when I was offered to have my own space, I was very hesitant because, again, we were trying to keep the goal in mind of the bear crawl. And I was like, you know what? I could make my own schedule. It's for the better. I could, do whatever I want to do. I can make my own money. And that'll be that. But I didn't realize how much effort it required, and how having one foot in the door and one foot out the door was actually detrimental to everything else. It took my focus away from what was the main goal. So it was a tough lesson, but a great one. And then that was why I ended up deciding to leave, because like I had back in college, I was sitting there looking at this could ruin everything I've been working for. Um, and I'm not about to have that happen. So I'm just going to wipe my plate clean. Whatever the consequences are, the consequences are. And I was okay with living with that. But um, I don't regret making that move. I don't regret taking that chance. The only way I would have regretted it is if I just tolerated it and said, this is the choice that I made. And sure, I spent a lot of money to get to this point, and I'm just going to be stuck here because I spent all this money and I made this big commitment, right? I told everybody on Instagram that I was going up north to start my gym, and and it's something a little more prestigious, I guess you could say, to all of my friends who I no longer talk to, and things like that, where we all have that itch to scratch, where we want people to we seek approval. And it was a big hit to my ego that, you know, I couldn't get it done, and I couldn't grow the business successfully. But I knew at the end of the day it wouldn't have mattered, because in a couple months I was going to get what was mine. The thing that nobody could see, but I knew everybody would want to see when it was done. Um, so it was really a no brainer to leave. But yeah, that was probably the hardest couple months of my life. It was very lonely. It was very scary. Um, and it was it was even more scary because I was potentially sacrificing my goal. And it was very hard to sleep at night.
Yeah. A lot of our conversations, I think, ended up coming back to the idea of, if the bear crawl is truly priority number one, not 1A, not 1B, but number one, what is the right thing to do? And it ended up, being going home and making training and preparing your priority. But that's not an easy decision because people don't necessarily understand that, right? That's not very traditional for somebody to say, you know what, screw this right now. Like I don't need a job. I don't need to build this business. What I need to do is put everything that I possibly have into this one goal that nobody understands yet, that nobody can see yet, but I know it's what I need to do. And when you made that decision, was there a sense of relief for you on the other side once you got home?
Absolutely. I think you subconsciously know right decision. And as tough as it is after you make that decision, it's like, think about, um, I know people can relate to this, but breaking up with a girlfriend, right? It's like long overdue. And you just feel guilty about it, but you know the right thing to do. And then you leave that relationship and you're happy again. Right. That's the way it was. And you want to talk about belief. Um, the sacrifices you're scared to make are the key to the belief that are going to get you to your goal. When I left and I came home, and I've left jobs before because of my training, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting my hours. And when you're leaving your livelihood, and you have bills to pay, um, you better believe in what you're doing. And when I sat there, and I was home and I was ready to start training full time, I had that belief. And I didn't question any of the moves that I made. And I was able to look at that in kind of like a weird way and say, like, shit, like you really believe in this. You really believe in it. And I hit the ground running when I got home. So I didn't regret it. And it was a huge sense of relief, because it was just like, this is my only focus now. And like, if this is my only focus, and if I was training in that, not in that capacity, but if I was training in those circumstances and now I have my plate clear, it is over for whatever's in front of me. So it was 100% the necessary move.
Yeah. In addition to that, I think it would be important to mention that while all of this is going on, you're also thinking about how do I build awareness of what's going to happen? How do I set myself up so that my personal brand can grow through this crawl? And that was a real struggle. I mean, right? I think TikTok, Instagram, social media in general, YouTube, those were hard spaces for you to show up in on a consistent basis while all of this was going on. And I think it would be a cool conversation just to get inside your head and to share with people what was going on there, because not that everybody else is training for a bear crawl, but I think people can relate to that.
Yeah, I hated making content. Hated making content. Um, when you're training for something, and I know think about a Nick Bear, right? Somebody like that who just fires on all cylinders, is a specimen. And I don't want to say he's one of like unique or anything like that, because he's not. I'm sure there's days where he doesn't want. I'm sure there was plenty of days where he didn't want to do what he wanted to do. Um, but maybe for the sake of BPN, he had to post content and things like that. But when you have a physical goal that requires so much energy, you don't care about anything else. And when I came home at the end of the day, I didn't want to edit. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to eat, and I wanted to make sure I was ready to give everything I had the next day. Um, so it was super hard because I knew I had to post content. I knew there was people that could benefit from what I was doing. It was just, how can I do that in a way that doesn't burn me out? Um, And again, I don't think I found that balance. I don't think I found that balance in a lot of areas in my life. I think it was just, let's keep moving and let's keep pivoting, and what happens happens. And when we look up at the end of this thing, the only thing that's going to matter is I got this thing done. I could have always reached more people. I could have always changed more lives, but I can't change any lives if I don't do what I have to do. Um, so again, it was just keeping the goal. And it was just like, content secondary, unfortunately. It'd be great. It would be great to take the chance and focus all on content and sacrifice a little bit of training. But I never believed in my ability enough to do that. I never believed that I could have just mentally gone out there and gritted a 31-mile bear crawl. Maybe I could have. I don't know. And now after I got it done, I think I'm slowly instilling that belief in myself where maybe I could have pulled the reins back a little bit, but I wasn't willing to take that chance because I had something to prove to myself. I had to remember the reasons why I got into it. And the reason was I wanted to be proud of myself. I didn't get into this and I didn't say I'm going to bear crawl 31 miles for a rage on social media. I got into this so I can get into bed at night and hit the pillow and fall asleep easily. Um, so as much as I wanted to really grow the brand and put the brand in a great spot, I knew that nothing would put the brand in as good of a spot as going out there and doing what I did, smashing the record completely and setting my own. So that was the focus, and it was not easy. I got a lot of freaking shit for it from my friends who do social media, and people didn't understand it. People were like, "You're doing all this, and you could be doing much more, and nobody's seeing what you're doing." And until you're the person that's doing that, until you're the person right in the fire who is going out there 6 hours a day and pouring your heart out into a goal that you believe in, nobody can tell you what to do. Nobody can tell you how much to post. Nobody can tell you that you're not doing enough, because sure, I wasn't doing enough in other areas of my life, but I didn't really care about those other areas of my life. What I cared about was getting my full attention, and that showed. Um, so I don't know. I think a lot of people are in that boat, right, with their jobs and stuff, or even athletic endeavors that they have. Like one of my least favorite things was going to the gym and training, filming training. It was just like I'm here to train. Like I want to be able to visualize myself bear crawling across the Brooklyn Bridge, doing all these things. I don't want to think about what shot looks good and what doesn't. So I think a lot of people can understand that, but I think what is going to put your brand in the best position is doing what you said you were going to do. If you have a big goal, completing that, and then understanding that once that task is done, you're still going to have to post, right? So you don't just post a lot, do one thing, and then it's gone and you're the man. This is a long game. This is consistency over time. I'm 23. I'm turning 24 tomorrow. I have a long time to post content, but guess what? Now I'm going to post content and everyone will go to my page and it says bear crawled an ultra marathon. If I didn't have that in my bio and rush to try and post as much as I could, I don't think I get as many eyeballs and I don't touch as many lives. So I think you just have to weigh your options. It's like you just find the balance. I found a good enough balance when I'm going to commit to another major goal, but now the focus is content. Now the focus is let me tell this story as much as I can. And I don't know if you remember, but I think we talked about this when I started to like test the waters with like posting a little more content and less training. And I said I knew I was screwed when I was trying to tell the story before I lived it. I don't know if you remember
I
that.
do.
And that's not how it works. You can't tell the story before you live it. And I understand that completely, because I could have never told you what the 31-mile bear crawl was going to be like, but now I lived it, and now I can tell you in great detail exactly what it's like. So it was just weighing my options, and again remembering why there's no social media if I'm not doing this bear crawl. So the bear crawl's first.
Yeah. And we're about to go into great detail for anybody listening. I'm very excited for that. Just to set the stage real quick, in training, what was the longest? And of course, I know the answer to all these questions, but I'll act as if I don't. What was the longest that you crawled prior to the 31 miles?
So now that it's over, and I can be completely transparent, it was 15 miles, but if I'm going to be completely honest, it was probably like 13 because I walked probably 2 miles of it. I don't know if I would be saying that if I didn't complete it. No, I'm kidding. I would. Um, but it was 15 on paper. It was 65 laps. I did walk a little bit of it. So I don't know what that counts for. I didn't exactly measure how far I walked, but it was 15.
Got it. And just to be extremely clear, there was zero walking during the 31.07. To a T, James would stand up, take a break if he needed to sit down. Someone would hold his spot, or he would actually just not move from his spot. And that was a true 31.07. And we'll get to that in a sec. But leading up, let's say a month out from the crawl. So we're in September. We're trying to plan logistics now. So you and I are actually sitting down on the internet, mapping out the course. No idea what we're doing. People probably thought, oh man, they must have really done their research and mapped this out. And we're literally sitting here clicking on a map, like, oh, that looks good. Let's go down this street. I don't know
Looks
anything about New York. Let's go this
it
street.
looks like it has a sidewalk. Yeah.
So we're clicking things. We're creating the route until we get to 31.07. We solidify that map. I print it out, save it, we email it around, make sure we have it. Then from there, it's logistics. It's okay, what time do we start? Going back and forth. We landed on 1 p.m. on Friday, October 7th, so that we could finish by 1 p.m. on Saturday, October 8th, in those 24 hours for the whole thing. And it was interesting because as we were kind of planning that out, we were trying to think, okay, how are we going to pick a time where people can actually meet us at the finish and kind of find us via social media and celebrate with us? And that plan, to be honest, kind of just got thrown out the window completely from the start of the crawl.
Yeah. There was no way to ever pinpoint exactly when we were going to finish. Um, Even certain miles that I've done before went terrible. And I don't even know. It was just like, again, I think we were all on the same page, and this is something that I tried to explain to everybody before. And I think once we were in the fire, everybody got it. It was like everything else is extra. Get that man to that finish line.
Yep.
If people are there, if people are not, it does not matter. We did our job. So no one was really focused on that. Everyone was focused on just making sure I had what I needed. Everyone was incredible. I'm sure once we get into it, we'll cover all of that stuff. But yeah, it was the preparation wasn't limited. We did the bare minimum, or a little bit above the bare minimum, I would say, to just make sure we had a plan. And then we just were like, we knew the whole process was just organized chaos, and we knew
Mhm.
exactly what we were getting into. We knew the theme of exactly what we were getting into was organized chaos. But we said it before. We said we don't care if we turn on Jefferson Street or Jackson Street. If it gets us to Central Park, it gets us to Central Park. I'm not looking at the view. I can't see anything anyways. I don't care what street we cross. You know, yeah.
Let me interject there, James. It's funny you say that now, and you said that before the crawl, but there was a specific moment that we'll get to where you said, "Get me off this street and get me to Central Park."
I remember.
But we'll get there. So, all right. So we plan out logistics. We come up with a list in detail of all the food we need, headlamps, all this stuff. Some of which we did bring, some of which we didn't bring. Whatever. We're going to notify the NYPD. Just make sure they are aware that this is going on. Maybe reach out to a few news stations. None of that really mattered in the end. And so, yeah, let me take you through my morning of the crawl. So actually, week of the crawl, I move all my clients earlier in the week. It's a hectic week. I'm just super excited the whole time. Can't wait. Wake up at 3:30 on Friday morning, get my run in, can't break the run streak just for the crawl. So do that. And I take a mega bus from Philadelphia to New York City, get in around 8 o'clock in the morning, grab coffee with my friends, Matt and Megan, who actually met us at one point on the crawl. And they directed me on the subway to Prospect Park. And I got there a little bit early, scoped it out, did a little bit of walking, beautiful neighborhood. And I kind of just waited for you guys to get there. And you guys got there around noon, and we were planning on starting around 1. And so let's go through who was there at the start of the crawl. And I'll let you rattle off some names, and we'll kind of make sure we don't miss anybody.
Yeah, so for starters, my family was there. So it was my stepfather, Phil, my mom, Jen, my sister, Casey, my brother, Torin. Um, I know if you guys listen to what was the name of the podcast you had before? I'm sorry, I'm
The,
drawing a
the
blank.
Pursuit podcast.
The Pursuit. I mentioned that I didn't really speak to my father. Me and my father actually rekindled over the past year. So he was there. And then it was media team, which was my buddy Manny, who was designated videographer for certain spots, say Brooklyn Bridge, Times Square, things like that, as well as photography. Um, my buddy Robert, who I just met about 2 weeks before when I was looking for a videographer. His job was to do a minute video, which he absolutely killed. It's on my Instagram, and a YouTube video, which is going to come out in about 2 weeks from now. So it's going to be in great depth. All the conversations, all the nitty gritty that you guys will want to see. And then my buddy and my best friend, Alex Silva, who was running my social media. He was the one going live on the breaks. I don't know if he's going to take credit for the live stream ending at 0.01 miles, but he was doing that. And then my good friend, well, you were there.
Yep.
My good friend and my coach. One of my good friends, Corey Camp, who I knew was, he's an athlete, he gets it, and he's someone that truly believes in the athlete mental health space. So I knew he was crucial to have there. Same thing with Dom Fusco, someone who's closer to my age, someone who I grew close with over the past year. We've had multiple phone conversations about trying to find our direction in life, and he's helped me. He was huge in helping me navigate the decision to choose to crawl when I was starting my business. So choose to crawl over my business. And I knew he was someone that understood how much I sacrificed to get to that point. He would not let me not get to that finish line. And then it was, let me see, one of my good friends, he wasn't my good friend in college, Ryan Richardson. We were friends in college. We weren't great friends. Not that we were enemies or anything, but we just had two separate groups. And I was living a different lifestyle at the time. I was kind of a degenerate, I'll say. But we reconnected over the past year, and we kind of just shot the shit. We helped each other through certain scenarios. And he knew how much I put into this, and he was someone that was eager to be involved. Everybody was there, was just excited to be involved. And that's what I was looking for. If you weren't 100% committed to being there for 24 hours, I did not want to see you. So everyone there wanted to be there for 24 hours. So that was, correct me if I'm missing anybody. I believe that
Molly.
my buddy, Molly, I'm sorry. Molly, my best friend's girlfriend. She also, because she's become one of my very good friends. She's listened to me talk about the bear crawl for countless hours with my friend Alex, and my business partner Tyler, who is in Massachusetts and saw me training on Industrial Ave, crawling next to 18 wheelers at any hour of the day. So he knew how much went into it. And he was someone who wanted to support me, as well as I have a manager who helps me with kind of brand partnerships and getting in touch with companies. He was there for the full 24. So that was the crew. I think we had about 9 or 10 people. And everybody we had a support car that had all the stuff in it. And it was difficult to get the support car around, but we'll get into that as we go, but that was the whole 24-hour crew.
Yeah. So as soon as you hopped out of the car, you were in the zone. That was so funny enough, the first time we met in person, which is just wild because it never feels that way when you get to know somebody so well online. And so, yeah, we hugged it out. It was go time. You were in the zone. Everybody used the bathroom. Your dad got a parking ticket in the first 30 minutes, which is hilarious.
Yeah, he literally pulled up and then they gave him a ticket as he was walking away from his car.
So we got ready. Everybody was prepared. I spoke a little bit, essentially just thanked everybody and said, James's job is to crawl. Our job is to get him there. You explained it was going to be chaotic. It wasn't going to go as we planned, and that didn't matter. And you were super grateful. And, you said, tell me when it's time, down on all fours. And we were next to Prospect Park, southwest corner. I counted down 3, 2, 1, and it was go time. I'm curious what was going through your mind right out of the gate as you crawled that first mile.
To be honest, I was thinking, I think I have to crawl this mile without stopping because I don't want anyone to see me stop and be like, oh boy, this is going to be a long one. But I think I only stopped twice during that mile, but I was just nervous. I was super over analyzing how I felt every hand strike when I started to sweat and things like that. But I was not really nervous. I had anxious nerves just to get going, and they kind of faded after the last mile. But during the first mile, I was really just focused on, let me get in a groove. Let me analyze kind of how I feel today and kind of dictate, the pace, or try and predict how the rest of the race is going to go, which I never could have done. But I was really just thinking like, holy shit, this is about to happen. This is about to go down.
Yeah. And so first mile pace was 27 minutes, 39 seconds. And that was your fastest mile of the crawl. And you did not stop. And I thought to myself, man, he's looking good. He says he's feeling good. I have a good feeling about this whole thing. We got two comments on the first mile. One woman said, please curb your dog. And the second was someone who was sitting on a park bench, a young lady. She clapped a couple times and she said, go, James. And you, without stopping, continued to crawl. You turned your head and you said, what was her name?
Jana,
Jonna.
Jana, yeah.
Jonna. And you were like, Jonna. And you kept crawling. And we were all like, who was that? And you're like, oh, that was my first girlfriend ever.
Yeah, she lives in Brooklyn, and she asked me where I was starting, and I told her where I was starting, and she said she lived right near there. I didn't expect her to come at all. She was so weird. She was sitting on a park bench. I don't want to say she was so weird, but she was like mysterious. She had
Yep.
like a hat,
Yep.
and I didn't know who it was at first, and then I heard her voice, and I looked, and I was like, oh my god, Jana. And then everyone was just like, who was that? And I was like, yeah, that was my first girlfriend. Like, wow, I didn't think she was gonna come. So that was interesting. Kind of gave me a jolt of energy. She walked with us for a little while, and then she had to go back to work. And then I remember my buddy Chris D'Souza, who's training for Ironmans right now.
Mhm.
He was someone who was kind of in the fire with me, and it was, one of the things I'll backtrack. Um, we always find ourselves feeling sorry for ourselves when we sign up for things like this, because nobody else has these level of commitments and they can just come in the gym and leave. But he was someone that was in the gym grinding with me, and was there for a little longer than most people, not as long as I was, but and we would always talk about it. But I would always feel sorry for myself and be like, these people just don't understand, man. Like they don't understand. I have to be here all day, and I would just bitch and moan, and then I would think to myself, and I'd be like, what? They shouldn't understand. Why should they understand? They're not doing what I'm doing. They're not going to be able to say they did what I did, so they shouldn't understand. But anyways, yeah. So it was nice to see him as well. And then yeah. So that was mile one.
Yeah. So mile one, smooth, easy, a lot of shade on a sidewalk next to Prospect Park in Brooklyn. So we keep crawling. Mile two, pretty uneventful. Smooth again for the time, in case anybody's wondering, 32 minutes, 19 seconds. And so you finished the first 2 miles in just under an hour. So how did the second mile feel?
I don't remember it, if I'm going to be completely honest. All I remember was we spoke about getting ahead early. Um, I think we reached that 1.8, which we originally intended, and
Yep.
we were in a good spot. I think we took maybe like 2, 3 minutes and then just hit the ground running. Probably could have been demise like shortly after, but I don't know. I don't really remember mile two. I remember three miles of that whole thing where I could tell you. I'm sure you'll tell me certain things that you remember, and I will
Oh yeah.
remember them. I know a lot of people were telling me that I was going to black out. I did not black out. Um, it was a long time. And it was a long time doing the same thing, looking at concrete. So I don't really remember landmarks or anything like that. Um, so yeah, mile two, I don't really even remember where we were.
Okay.
Maybe we started to get towards the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't remember.
So Brooklyn Bridge started at mile let's say five and a half, six. So we weren't there yet, but still crawling. Maybe this is a good time to add. I was walking next to James. I had my phone, which was tracking the distance and the time. I was the person for the most part telling James, hey, move left, move right, watch your step. There's some water. There's some dog poop. That happened quite a bit. Nobody stepped in dog poop. You didn't put your hand in dog poop, except actually me at one point. I was kicking a leaf out of the way, and it turned out the leaf was on top of a bunch of dog poop. But I took one for the team. It's cool.
I think
Uh,
I remember scraping your foot.
yep. So, yes. And then Ryan was navigating. So we handed that over to Ryan. You had actually written out turn by turn directions in a journal, pen and paper, which Ryan was holding with his phone. He was wearing cargo shorts or like,
Yeah.
short shorts with like highlight socks and like a fanny pack and a backpack. He just looked like a Boy Scout, even though he's not. Um,
Yeah.
and he was incredibly helpful. Ryan, if you're listening to this, thank you. We could not have navigated the streets of New York like we did without your help. So appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and
He's
then,
he was
oh, what was that?
I said he was clutch. It was having two people on that was definitely great.
Yeah. And so the other thing we didn't mention was we were going to bring a broom to sweep the sidewalk in front of you just in case there was glass or debris. We forgot that. So what ended up happening was people would just kind of walk in front, kick things out of the way and clear the path. And that was a team effort. Everybody did that. So mile two, three, four, even into five, I would say was relatively uneventful. We kind of weaved our way from Prospect Park in Brooklyn up toward the bridge. Do you have anything to add on this first, let's say, 5 miles?
No, I was feeling good at that point. I mean, there were some steep downhills that I do remember, but I was still physically fresh, so they didn't really much matter. Um, yeah, they were pretty uneventful. The first 3 miles to me happened very fast. Um, I remember the next thing I remember is when I don't know if it was mile 3 or mile 4, but it was right before we got to the bridge when I put my feet up on you and Corey.
Yeah.
Um, that's when I remember sitting there and being like, I don't know, oh, fuck, this is going to be a long day.
Okay. So before we get there, mile three was done in 34 minutes and 50 seconds. Mile four was 44 minutes and 42 seconds. And mile five was 46 minutes and 15 seconds. And then to go back to that, that was likely around mile 4 or 5. But when James would take breaks, the breaks looked different every time. Sometimes it was you just simply standing up, shaking out the arms, just, stretching the neck a little bit and getting right back down and crawling. Other times it was you sitting down against a building or some kind of wall, and somebody using the Theragun on your shoulders and somebody, retaping your hands or giving you food, which, we didn't do a great job of fueling through the first 6 miles, I would say. I think, it was nice out. You were moving well. You were feeling good. You did complain a few times about your stomach not feeling great. That was one thing I remembered from the first couple miles. But outside of that, the breaks were relatively short. And there was one point where your mom suggested, let's elevate his feet because, that could get some blood flow out of his legs and we can kind of refresh that. So we did that. And then around mile 5.5, we started to approach the Brooklyn Bridge. What were your thoughts as you saw the bridge kind of up ahead?
Initial thoughts, I was excited because this was like specifically one of the points that I visualized during the crawl. I'm happy I visualized it so much because it was nothing like I visualized it. I think hitting it at roughly 6 or 7 p.m. when we did was a tough idea. It was a lot of move left, move right, people just trying
Oh,
to take snapping random pictures of me. Um, do you remember that guy that
uh-huh.
just like walked by and like helped quickly snapped up his phone or it was a
It
camera
was
and
a
like
camera. It made a noise. Yeah.
yeah, he like snapped a picture and I was like, did that guy just take a picture of me? And he like ran away.
You know what,
Uh,
James? He actually came back later and walked past us and came back again and stopped that time from a distance and took another picture. So, hey, if you're
maybe
if you're listening to this, whoever you are, send that our way. We'd love to see them.
yeah, man, definitely send that our way. Um, but yeah, initial thoughts, I was excited because it was such a cool landmark. We were going to take a team picture. And it's just a really cool view. I mean, all of Manhattan. So I was excited for it, but it went south. I
Yeah.
think very
So we get to the foot of the bridge. We're starting to gain some elevation, but we're not quite at the bridge just yet. We stop, you change your shirt. We I think tried to get you to eat something, but still at that point you weren't really eating, maybe just a sip of water or some electrolytes or G1M at that point. And just looking ahead, you see the bridge, it's beautiful. Like you said, Manhattan in the background, sun is setting at that time. Temperature is maybe 65 degrees. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I'm thinking in my mind, man, this is perfect. Like we're gonna go over this bridge. It's gonna be scenic. James is still feeling relatively good, or at least I thought. And we start crawling over the bridge, and like you said, it's prime time. People are taking pictures. People are walking, riding bikes. It's crowded. The bridge material that we're walking and crawling on is wooden slats, which
yeah.
at the time I didn't think anything of, but you were thinking a lot about that apparently. What was going through your head?
So for those of you who don't know the Brooklyn Bridge, and or I should say, those of you who do know the Brooklyn Bridge, um, you know the wooden slats. I've You might not even notice it if you walk on it, because I walked on it previously and didn't notice it. But when you're staring down at the wooden slats, there's a significant space in between the slats, and there is nothing under the bridge. It is straight down to the water. I'm scared of heights. I don't like heights. I didn't think that going over the bridge was going to trigger that, but it made me severely nauseous, and I got really bad tunnel vision. And I could barely crawl like 5 yards. And between that and trying to focus on Joe, you yelling, left and right, or people moving around me, whatever. I just got really nauseous. And I think it was just a combination of also me not eating. My stomach was starting to hurt before that. Um, and I just could not wait to get off that bridge. Yeah, it was brutal. I just kept looking down. I was watching the waves hit the base of the bottom of the bridge. And it was just throwing me for a loop. It was that was That's one of the 3 miles that I remember because it was so difficult.
What
I
was
think it took like an hour and 15 minutes to get over the bridge.
Yeah, so that the bridge was basically miles 6 and 7 combined essentially, and together those 2 hours took about I'd say an hour and a half or so. But you're right, it was a lot of starting and stopping. It was a lot of up and down. I think that was the first time I saw this look in your face where you looked overwhelmed, and you actually said the word overwhelmed to me at one point. You said, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And it was tough. Like at that point into the crawl, we're 6, 7 miles in, still relatively young. It's fresh, and I'm not sure what to say to you yet at that point because I'm saving all of the good stuff, all the deep stuff for the end because I feel like we're probably going to need it. And so at that point, all I can do is say, "Yeah, tell me what you need. Like let's take breaks, like take your breath. Like we've got time. We built in a buffer to our plan. Like our plan was to get ahead early." And have a couple hours throughout the night where we could slow down if we needed. And I was like, listen, it's fine. Like let's take the time now. You weren't about that, understandably. You just wanted to get down and crawl, so you gritted it out. And we got to the other side of the bridge, and that descent from the top of the bridge to the other side of Manhattan was went really slow in my mind. And we got you to the other side. You sat down against this kind of like just concrete divider. We got a cold water bottle from a stand nearby. We put it behind your neck. You just sat back up against the wall. And to me, you looked exhausted. I don't know if there's a different word, but you just looked drained to me at that point.
I was a little defeated. I was in the video. I think Robert depicts it perfectly. We were talking about it. Um, I said, um, I don't exactly remember what I said. I don't want to use the wrong word because I know people might go back and look at the video. I said I was out of it. I was delusional. And I think delusional is the right word. I was super overwhelmed. There was a dude screaming in New York 45 times. I remember saying, if that guy says New York one more time, I'm gonna lose my shit.
Yep.
Um, and there were so many people just zooming by. It was like
Yeah.
stations, people painting, and it was just like if you picture, those scenes in a movie where people, it's just like everything's just moving so fast, and it's just somebody sitting in a tizzy, and that's how I was, and I was really, really defeated, and I was just like, it's all going to go out the window. Everything I worked for, this is the moment where it goes down, and I didn't prepare well enough. I really thought at that moment I was like, maybe I didn't do enough. And you guys really just picked me back up, and then we got on the road, and at that point, I think we fucking kicked it into gear.
Yeah, so I that's true. And before we get there, to this point, now 7 miles in, you're feeling defeated. I think you had, in addition to the hydration that we talked about already, maybe two Twizzlers. Like that was it.
Yeah,
That was it. And
yeah.
Dom kind of like pulled me aside away from you by a step or two and just said like, "Hey man, I think like he's got to eat more." And I was like, "Yeah, but he's saying he's nauseous. Like he's nothing is appetizing." And so there's a picture. that Manny captured, and I'm on one side of you holding a half open Rice Krispie treat, and Dom's on the other side with a flat Coke. And we were just, it was just take a bite from my hand, take a sip from Dom's hand as much as you could. And we took our time, and then you got back up. And from there, I think you caught a second wind. Now, from my recollection, the second wind didn't happen until we were through Chinatown, but we crawled into Chinatown. You were saying pretty frequently that you were nauseous.
Yeah, I threw up about 17 times after the break.
So you were
Falling.
you had these mini dry heaves, or you would just spit, and you'd say, I gotta vomit, and I'd say, do it, and you'd say, I just can't, not yet. And there was this one point in Chinatown where we were just crawling past like fish market after fish market. It was like the water on the ground that you were crawling through was
Fish
just fish
juice.
juice.
Ugh.
And you just turned, I remember, mid crawl, you just picked up your front right arm almost like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant, but you just puked on the side of a building and then just kept crawling like nothing happened.
Yeah, I was trying to make myself throw up because once I let that one go, it felt much better. And I think that's what bled me into my second wind. That throw up right there, I think it kind of reset me. And I think people can understand that feeling is like when they feel so sick, they feel so sick, and then they throw up and they have that like hot sweat and they feel relieved. I got a little bit of that, and I caught that wind, and then was just like trying to make myself throw up, like purposely almost gagging myself. Threw up a couple more times, and then I think again it's all really all a blur, but we started to pick up speed.
Yeah. So, all right. So we got through miles 6 and 7 over the bridge, about a combined hour and a half. Let's say mile 8 was kind of the tail end of that rest break, and then into Chinatown was 53 minutes and 39 seconds. Now, from there, we went up, what is the street called? I'm just zooming in here. Christie Street, which we were going north at that point because we were through Lower Manhattan. We were going to cut east later on to get to the water. But you crawled your ninth mile in 39 minutes and 27 seconds, which compared to the previous 4 or 5 miles was just flying.
Yep.
Um,
I don't remember. I don't remember what happened there or anything. I think maybe we took Tylenol at that point, and I think I started eating a little bit more. And I don't even know if I had to give a rough estimate of how many calories I consumed during the thing, and maybe even like 3,000, 4,000,
wasn't a lot.
burning 12,000. So not much. It was even towards the end when I was really supposed to eat, I didn't. But
Yeah. So we got, let's say it's 8 o'clock at night. You took your first. It was a kind of a combination Tylenol, Advil. You took two of those. It was funny though, James, because you didn't really see this, but I was upright with everybody else, and I saw your mom. Your mom was being a mom. She was worried about you, and she would want to say, or let like take Advil, and you were like, no, I'm good. And she just wanted, I saw the pain in her face watching you in so much pain. Were you aware of that?
yeah, I was laying on my back at one point. I don't remember what mile it was, and she didn't say it out loud, but she said, "Do you want to stop?" And I looked at her and I said, "Get out of here. Don't even don't even speak. Don't even say it." I was like, "No." And she never said it again. But I could sense it.
Hmm.
I knew she was a little nervous, but I was like, "Don't even come anywhere near me with that energy." We were saying it the night before, ER or PR. Like I'm leaving in a body bag before I don't finish this thing. And I don't think that's something a mother wants to hear, but it's true. So that's the only time I could see it in her face. But yeah.
Yeah. So it's about 8, let's say roughly between 8 or 9 at night at this point. It's dark. We're crawling next to Roosevelt Park in Lower Manhattan. Nightlife is out. There are people out and about moving around. There's music, there's cars honking, there's, anything you can imagine in New York City on a Friday night. And, we're crawling and we're making good time. My friends Matt and Megan met up with us at that point because we were close to their apartment. They had been following along, tracking my location the whole time, very interested to meet up with us and see what this was all about. And I'm glad they linked up with us because they were very helpful in navigating us to the water eventually through some construction areas and some detours. But before we get there, so we're taking breaks along the way as we're getting here. You're sitting down periodically, maybe every 10, 20 minutes. You're asking me every now and then, can we take a break? Like, is this good time or should I keep crawling? I'm giving you direction. And when you're taking these breaks, I think it's important to tell everybody, it's a team effort. You're sitting down, right? Someone's feeding you, somebody's using the Theragun, somebody's changing your hand wraps every now and then. Somebody's making sure you have something else that you need. Me and Ryan are coordinating on directions and where to go next. And it's this buzzing around you where everybody's got a job. Even if they didn't have a job specifically, everybody was doing something to make sure that we had what we needed to keep going as soon as you were ready to crawl. And it was really special to watch that.
Yeah, I'll even go as far as say this: I only gave two people jobs beforehand, and it was you and Ryan. And the only reason that Ryan ended up getting assigned a job was because I wanted someone to make sure that we knew exactly where we were going. And I thought, again, that he was somebody, he's outdoorsy, he can figure it out. You were someone who was reliable. So I put kind of you two into cahoots. But you were the only one that really had like a job, a designated job. I didn't tell anyone when they showed up what they had to do. But I'll say this, I mean, if there was a record book and my name was in it, there is 10 asterisks that go next to it. I don't do this alone. There's no shot in hell. No way. Um, every time I looked up, there was five people in my face, water bottle already open, pretzels in my mouth, whatever. People taking off their sweatshirts, throwing it on top of me while I'm laying on the ground. It was incredible. And that will always be mentioned when I talk about this crawl. Is the team I had around me was fucking incredible, and I didn't even assign them a role. And it was just beautiful to see people care about something that I created. And we spoke about that a while ago when I watched the Leadville doc, where Nick Bear ran the Leadville 100. And he had that team around him, in Colorado, and they were doing the map recon and all this stuff during, and everyone was just like even getting emotional when he finished, and just it was like a team thing. And like I said to you, I was like, how do I create that? How do I create something around my bear crawl like that? And I think I did, and I think it was just picking the right people. But everybody took responsibility for something, and everybody did what they did, whatever they had to do. And I remember like every time I looked up, it was you, Ryan, or Dom. Um, that was right there immediately. And then Corey and Alex would come and fill in the gaps like 3 seconds after.
Mhm.
And it was, I almost felt bad at points because it was like to the point where all I had to say was like water Twizzlers, boom, there, or massage Twizzlers, kebab from the stand, done, you know. Um, I did not have to focus on anything but giving everything I had to give to crawl 100 more yards, and then we'll figure it out again. And whatever we do is going to get me the next 100 yards. Um, it was incredible. I can't even put into words how thankful I am for everybody that made this goal their own. It would have been impossible to do alone, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And we'll get to more of that as we go on. But we keep crawling. I'll say the times for mile 10 was 38:19. So again, just absolutely booking it. And then this is where I think things slowed down a little bit. So it started raining at one point, right? Now, I'm not sure. I think the rain started later. So the rain
It
hadn't,
did. It was around like 3 a.m. in Times Square.
yeah, so the rain hadn't started yet. When did your friend Mike, get there?
I think around mile 11, I believe, maybe 11 or 12.
So I remember when he got there. Do you remember what he said? So to set the stage, James is having one of the tougher rest breaks. He's on his back. He immediately starts shivering. So people are taking sweatshirts off their own backs, throwing them on James. We're rubbing him, trying to keep him warm. Somebody's massaging, somebody's feeding, somebody's taping the hands. And Mike, who I didn't know at the time, walks, across the street diagonally toward us, and he's coming at us. And you remember what he said, James?
I remember I was laying on my back and everyone's like, Corey's like rubbing my belly, and I'm being hand fed pretzels. And I hear this voice from across the street, and he's like, "What the fuck are we doing? Taking breaks? I didn't come all the way out here to take a break. Let's fucking go!" And everyone looked at me like, "Who is that guy?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "No way, dude." Yeah, that's my best friend since kindergarten. That's my guy. And if there's anyone to lighten the mood, it's him. But he really did. Unbelievable.
Yeah, what a guy. And so he plays a pivotal role here in a little while, which we'll get to. But so we get back up. So let's say mile 11 was an hour and 5 minutes. Now, mile 11 was an hour and 5 minutes because we got to the water between mile 10 and 11. We're right at the beginning of mile 11, and we took a huge break. We were on pace. We were ready for a big break. You needed to change a few things, pieces of clothing. We needed to get you more food, which at that point, again, it was Twizzlers, Rice Krispies, soda, G1M. Um, yeah, it was pretty basic. Glazed donut. Those glazed donuts
Yep.
were good.
Yep, I had one.
Yep, you had one. And
Um,
what
yeah,
else?
I was gonna say pretzels. I remember pretzels were like my savior, but
Yeah, you
uh,
ate a lot of
and a
pretzels.
few other notorious things.
And it wasn't pretzels, it was pretzel chips, to be
Pretzel
clear.
chips, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're down by the water. We're ready to crawl. There was some construction that kind of got in the way, so we had to readjust our starting point along the water, but we entered that space and we were ready to go. Just beautiful, really dark. You see buildings in the background, bridges lit up. It's just the perfect setting. You wanted music at that point, so we threw in the headphones. Big Booty Mix, Volume 17. You pretty much, I think, know every single place in that mix where every song starts. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. I listened to it so much during training that I could tell you exactly what timestamp the songs are. Yeah.
Yeah. So you start crawling, maybe take 5 steps, stand up,
Mhm.
adjust your pants, get back down, get back down. You're just tugging at your pants, get back down, crawl 2 more steps, get back up. You look frustrated, try one more time, get up. And I don't remember the verbiage you use. Do you even know what you said?
I have no idea. It wasn't pretty though.
Wasn't pretty, but to be PG with it, things were chafing, right?
Yeah.
That's what you told us, and you just said I can't do it like this, and so we scrambled in your bag. We found new compression shorts. We formed a half circle as if there were people around. I mean, this is midnight. There's nobody around.
Yeah, there was
We, we,
nobody.
we form a half circle. You change compression shorts, and you try again, 2, 3 more steps. You stand up. It didn't help. So now we're at this crossroads where okay, we this is not what we thought was going to stop James. But we did not think about we didn't think about that. We didn't prepare for that. I mean, like you run a marathon, people put band-aids on their nipples, and we did not think about this. So Molly had had like a lipstick sized tub of Vaseline. That
No
she said,
longer.
yes, no longer. She does not have the Vaseline anymore. And we said, why don't we try this? So you took your numb finger. At this point, could you even feel your fingers?
No, because around mile 2 and 3, I had this extra palm pad that I didn't use during training that I had in, and it was cutting off circulation in my fingers. So I didn't have feeling in my fingers for pretty much the entirety of the race.
And just to zoom out right now, can you feel your fingers after the fact?
No, I still can't.
Okay, so fingers are numb. But back to mile 11. So try the Vaseline, does not work. At this point, your mom pulls out a package of band-aids from her bag of tricks. And there's one band-aid in there in particular that's pretty big. It's like a big square, maybe 5 inches in diameter each way, across each way. And I say, I think that could work. And we're thinking of band-aids on nipples for marathons. And so for people listening or watching, you know, you can do the math.
What we're putting a band-aid on.
Yeah. So, but at this point, again, James's fingers are numb. His hands don't really work. And so we're all just standing there. There's a brief moment of silence. And I think, I forget what Mike said, but he's like, I'll do it. And so,
Well, there's only one person I know that can do it.
yeah.
And I think at that moment, everyone was like, there's no way that's me. That can't be me. And Mike was like, fuck it, I'll do it. And he stepped up.
He stepped up. We formed another half circle, turned our backs, and they did their thing, and it worked, right?
Yeah, beautiful. I honestly, um, it worked so well. I forgot about it until I got home and went to go to the bathroom, and there was tape, and I was like, "Oh no, I can't believe I have to take this off right now."
So it was a durable banded. I don't know what brand it was, but it got the job done. And then, so you had the music in, we're along the water. It's beautiful. We're by ourselves for a while. You crawled the next mile. Mile 11 again was that hour and 5 minutes, but part of that was the rest. And then you get mile 12 at 41 minutes, 16 seconds. You're cruising. We're in communication back and forth that, we were behind from the Brooklyn Bridge and from some other spots, but we're making up ground. You're feeling pretty good. And our goal is to cut back across the city at some point. Now, our original goal was to cut back across the city, I want to say around 13th Street, but there was some construction. And actually, Robert, the videographer, played a pretty pivotal role here in kind of pointing us to a place where we can cross from the water through the construction back into the city. Shout out to Robert. And do you remember anything from that stretch along the water that you want to share?
No, all I remember was I had Big Booty in, and there was one part that I kept wanting to replay, but Alex felt the need to just be 100 yards behind, and it kept cutting out. So I had no music for like 10 of those 40 minutes, but what are you gonna do? I ended up taking them out anyways.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's really all I remember. And then I remember just kind of it was open along the water. I was kind of kind of zigzagging because I started off this to the sides. So I ventured close to the railing, and it was just right next to the water. There was a nice breeze at that point. I had sweatpants and a long sleeve t-shirt on, and I started to feel good again. I felt cool. I started to sweat a little bit, and then we were off.
Yeah. So we were off. We cut back west into the city. I believe we ended up on 14th Street instead of 13th Street. But regardless, we crawl near Gramercy Park, near Union Square. At this point, I think it's also just important to mention that there are people again. So along the river, there weren't many people, but now it's probably 11 or 12 at night, maybe even past 12. There are people out coming back from places, going places, getting some weird looks from groups of people. And so we keep crawling Union Square, and we eventually end up at Times Square. But before we get to Times Square, there were a few moments where we took kind of extended breaks, and we haven't mentioned the car in a while. And that's because the car really did not find us like we thought it would. Um,
No, there was I didn't expect it to. And I think, my parents are very organized people, and had a lot of trouble comprehending this event when I told them, like, there's no plan, don't plan, we're just going to figure it out. They didn't like that very much, but I think everyone understood eventually. Um, but yeah, the car didn't make it there until I don't even really remember. I don't remember really even I never got in the car. I never used the
nope,
car.
not once.
Everyone, it was more of people just branching off from the group and running to find the car.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the only thing I remember was I think that at that point, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, that was this where we took the break by the subway entrance.
This is where we took the break by the subway entrance, correct. And before we talk about that, it's probably just important to say that the car had essentially extra water and Gatorade and food and a generator that was charging all of the portable batteries that I was charging my phone with to keep the time going, that Alex and Manny and Robert were charging their cameras with. And so logistically, there was a lot to figure out. And the car, even though it didn't reach us frequently, definitely was pivotal and very important for this whole thing to work.
Yeah, it was a lot of everyone just running to the car, like I said. And it found us at certain points, but um, we figured it out. We figured it all out, and it worked out.
Yeah, so we do take a break by a subway stop. Now you remember that specifically?
I remember that vividly because I was getting to the subway point, and I stood up for a break, and my buddy looks at me and he goes, "You're not gonna believe this." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, Devin just put you on a story. And I was like, no fucking way, dude, really? And he was like, yeah, Devin just put you on a story. And I was like, no way. And he was like, look, and he showed me my phone, and it was a DM from Devin. And I looked at the story, and he was just like, someone told me James Boria is bear crawling a marathon uh, through the city, raising money for mental health. And then I remember at that point, it was like a second life. I just got fully rejuvenated, and I was just like, this is the pinnacle of my existence, basically. And that's why I remember that mile. It wouldn't have been significant if it wasn't for that. So, but I just thought I'd mention that because it was a very cool moment for me. Um, Seeing this whole journey come to fruition of, that was someone I really looked up to in the beginning, and now I'm someone that he's acknowledging, because I've seen this through all of everything I've been through. And I think that's really why it lit a second wind in me, because it was like I saw this through to the point where the person who I looked up to is now acknowledging me as someone who's, uh, I don't want to say in the same category, but respecting me, and I never ever saw myself. I thought I would be someone that he would see over. But now I'm writing my name next to it. So it was very, very cool moment. Just not for the crawl, but in my life in general.
Yeah. I actually remember before we got to that stop, as you were crawling, Alex tapped me on the shoulder and held up the phone next to me. And the top DM, I think the only text you can see without opening it was "Let's go" from Devin.
Yeah.
And I said, should we show him? And I thought in my mind, I didn't know how you were going to react to that. And so I thought, let's just wait until he's stopped. Let's not show him right now. And I'm glad that it gave you a second win there, because we still had a long way to go at that point. Like, this is essentially the half marathon mark, maybe a little past it. So again, mile 12 is 44:42. Mile 13, oh, sorry, mile 12 is 41:16. Mile 13 is 44:42. Mile 14, 47:54. So we're kind of like at that half marathon mark right now. We stop at the subway stop. You read that message, you have a second wind, and we keep going. Anything else from that stretch that you remember?
Not that I remember. I think that was at that point that I said to you, like, we could not take these long breaks,
Yep.
because my body can't get cold again. It was extremely difficult to, I wanted to rest so badly because I was so exhausted, but it was not worth it because it hurt 10 times worse to get cold and try and bear crawl again. Um, just for my wrists and like even like my knees, just like trying to get down into that position. I had to get down extremely slow, and then trying to find the rhythm when I was cold, everything hurt way worse. So I told you at that point, I think I was like, we were supposed to have those breaks overnight. I was like, I don't think we should take those breaks. I think even if we just crawl for 5 minutes, off, five on, and five off, we'll do that instead of sitting still for 20 minutes because it really kind of screwed me up.
And that's something we didn't think about or account for before we got there. So Josh would periodically come up to me and just check on the distance and ask, when's the next break, or how are we doing? And at one point around there, after we had that conversation, I just told him, like, we can't take these 10-minute breaks anymore. We can't do anything really longer than five. We have to keep moving. And that's what we did. We kept moving. Our plan was to get to the west side of Manhattan, the lower west side, which we did. Our initial idea was to do the High Line, which is raised up off of the street. Really cool scenery. Unfortunately, we got there after midnight. It closes at 11. Thank goodness Ryan was with us, because he was able to run ahead, jog up the steps, come back down, and say, the gates are closed. He did that twice. He checked two different entrance points. But instead of going on the High Line, we just kind of crawled around Chelsea, and we stayed on the west side of Manhattan. It was quiet. We kind of just weaved in and out of the streets. We actually did a lap around a bunch of blocks twice. We went up and down. I think at one point you might have looked up and said, "Is that the same building?" And
I
I
did. Yeah,
and I
remember
made the joke. I said, "Yeah, we've been here the whole time."
that.
And yeah, so we did that, and that brings us to mile 15, Lower West Side, Chelsea. Mile 15 was a fast one, 35:46. You were feeling good. You remember anything else from that area?
I remember getting to 15 and saying, I'm going to finish this because this is the farthest I've gone in training and I'm never getting this far again. So it kind of just, again, put me in the realm of looking back on everything I did. And Um, it was an accomplishment enough to get to that point because, like I said, in the beginning of this podcast, when I did 15 miles, I walked a bit of it, and
Mm,
now I crawled it clean. And I was standing there, tired, but like fulfilled, and I felt good at that point. Like I just did a 35-minute mile
mm,
for mile 15. So confidence was reinstilled, and I knew that um, right then and there, I had a conversation with my best friend Alex, and he said, everything from here on out is unexplored. And you have no idea what's going to come. But that's the point of this. That's the point. The point is you want to figure out what these miles feel like. And you're going to want to freak out at certain points. You're going to feel like shit, but you have to remember you've never been here. Not many people have ever been here. And it was a nice perspective to hear at that point. And that's really all I remember around that point. It was kind of a blur. Like I said, I remember looking up at that building multiple times and being like, have we been around this building the whole time? Um, and we did, I think we did a circle.
mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that was it. Everything from there on out was extremely uncertain.
Yeah. And so we keep going. We make a couple adjustments. Again, shout out Ryan for navigating the streets. Nothing went according to plan. And we ended up, though, getting to Times Square. So we kind of cut east again to the middle of lower Manhattan. And then we went straight north into Times Square. And somewhere as we were heading toward Midtown Manhattan and Times Square, it started to rain, and it was a light rain, but it was noticeable. And I don't think that moisture helped at all because you were sweating already, and then your clothes got wet. And then anytime we stopped, it was almost immediate shivering.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember it was really tough. Um, I couldn't get the chill out of my bones. I couldn't even crawl long enough at that point because I was so tired to start sweating again and get my body temperature up. It just kind of like went back to equilibrium. So those miles were brutal. Those miles were just filled with everybody throwing their layers on me, and shaking me down and trying to get me warm. People were asking me if I wanted like hot chocolate. I remember I could not think about hot chocolate. Um, yeah, but in some sick way, I remember I was just like, I was happy it was raining, because it was just another element to me completing it that was just like, and it rained,
Mm.
like I did all this and it rained. Um, so it was tough, and I was like severely looking forward to the sun coming up. Um, but yeah, those miles were tough. And I'm glad we decided not to take those breaks.
And at this point, it's 2:30 in the morning, and we're headed toward Times Square. We get to Times Square, and I don't know if you felt this way, but it would it it's so bright. It is so bright.
Mhm.
It's the middle of the night, and it feels like it's daytime.
Mhm.
And I just remember going through Times Square, looking around at all of these giant screens around us, looking back down, watching you crawling through puddles, looking at the people around us, that 24-hour crew walking with us, feeling just an overwhelming sense of gratitude and also questioning, is this real?
Yeah.
It did not feel real.
You want to know what's funny? There was a couple times during that crawl, and let me backtrack. I mentioned this to you during one of our calls, before we did the crawl, and I had a nightmare one night, and I did the crawl in my dream, and I blacked out, and I didn't know I blacked out, but I woke up in my bed, and I said to my mom the next day, or this was in my dream. I said, "What happened? Did I do it?" And she said, "No, you got to mile 9, and you went out." And I like shot up like sweating from the dream, and it felt real. It felt real. I was like extremely depressed. I just it was anxious, overwhelmed. It was the worst feeling in my life, and I got to live with the feeling of not completing it. And that feeling kind of allowed me to dig deeper on the day because I knew what exactly would feel like if I decided to stop and go home. And there's some other reasons that we'll cover. Maybe I'll mention it after this before I lose my train of thought. But um, I remember crawling through Times Square and thinking, please tell me this is not a dream. Please tell me I didn't just go through all of this and this is hell already. Please tell me I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be the day. Like, please tell me that I'm not going to have to do this again. Because if I wake up tomorrow and I have to do this again, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Um, and at that moment, I kind of fought for reasons, and it's gonna make me emotional. Holy shit! Um, but I looked at my little brother. Uh, I was just like, there's no way I could ever have this kid see me quit. You know, and it like reminded me of my childhood and how I didn't really have too many. I don't want to say too many people to look up to, but I didn't have like somebody in my family, like a father figure wise or anything like that, where I remembered somebody just gritting their teeth through like something unbearable. And that was kind of my moment to be that guy. And I was like, well, whether this is a dream or not, this kid can't see me quit. So I'm gonna get there. But yeah, shit.
Yeah. I mean, I we'll talk about it later, but I sobbed at the end, and yeah, it is an emotional thing, man. It was I didn't expect it to be that charged with emotion, and I didn't realize you were thinking those thoughts as we were crawling through Times Square. And lucky for you, it wasn't a dream.
Yeah,
Um,
thank God.
at this point, your stepdad Phil is back with us. He switched off with your mom, driving the car around the city. And man, let me just take this time to just give him a massive shout out. He's a
Yeah,
trooper, man. I don't know how old Phil is. You know how old Phil is?
60 something.
60 something. And Phil is in shorts, I think, and a
Yeah,
t-shirt
yeah,
walking around Times Square with us in the rain in like high 40, low 50-degree weather. Not a single complaint. Not
nope.
not a single suggestion. He is just there for whatever anybody needs. And when we got through Times Square, all that you needed was a chicken kebab and a smoothie. So at to this point, again, mind you, it is Twizzlers, it is Coke, it
Yeah,
is Rice Krispie treats, some pretzel chips, a donut, and that's about it.
yeah,
And out of nowhere, we see this food truck, and you ask for a kebab and a soft pretzel, which you did not eat. I don't think you ate the soft pretzel. I carried it for
no,
a while. No.
no.
And a smoothie. And that smoothie was like a second life for you.
Yeah, it was pivotal. It was, and I started to drink those the rest of the time. But yeah, that smoothie just it made me feel alive again. It really did. I think it was just a great way to get a bunch of nutrients in, and that were just easily digestible. Everything else was kind of getting stuck in my mouth. It was super hard to either the candy made my spit really thick,
Yeah.
or the pretzel I couldn't even chew because it was just sticking to the walls of my mouth. Um, but the smoothie just went down really, really easy, and I was able to drink it like super fast. So yeah, shout out to Phil there. That was huge. And the kebab I ate like sporadically throughout, but it was good to get some protein in, and it was delicious. All I could think about at that time was just like I didn't want any sweet
Mm,
foods. I didn't want more candy. I didn't want donuts or anything like that. I just wanted bland, something that I didn't have to really think about.
yeah. And so, all right. So let's give some times. Again, mile 16, 46:15, mile 17, 37:15, mile 18, an hour and 3 minutes. Now, at that point, we're kind of like Midtown East area, I believe, near the Museum of Modern Art, not directly adjacent to it, but on an adjacent street. And we took a really long break in there at one point. Do you remember we were next to I think a United States Postal Service truck?
He was in the truck. Yep, I remember.
We got to this side street, this obscure side street. It's like now 3:34 in the morning, maybe.
Looked
And
very sketchy.
it's so sketchy. And there's this group of 10 guys, and one of them is crawling, and he just like collapses for a rest break on his back. We are literally right next to the passenger seat of this giant United States Postal Service truck.
He doesn't even look.
I don't even think the guy looked over at us
He
once. We were
didn't
there
look.
for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, he didn't look.
No. So we took that break. That one was a little bit longer than we had previously planned for, but we needed it. We retaped the hands. Alex came in clutch, retaping throughout this whole thing. And yeah, and then we got back up and moving. And those were slow streets, I remember back there. Is that your recollection as well?
Yeah, I remember Miles 18. Miles 18 and 19 were kind of slow. 20 was kind of I knew I was close to the marathon mark, so I felt a little better. But getting to mile 20 was extremely difficult.
Yeah, so mile 18 and 19 combined were about an hour and 37 minutes. Mile 20 and 21 were both just over 30 minutes. So that was, if I'm remembering correctly, sun is coming up. It is almost the morning time. You had some Red Bull in your system at that point, and we
Yep.
were moving. And now funny story. To this point in the crawl, like 18, 19 miles, James, mind you, is telling us, shaking his head, yes or no. Like, I can't eat a Twizzler. Like, yes, I'll take a bite of a Rice Krispie treat. But that's about it. Anything we put in his face, he's consuming, no questions. Torin, his younger brother, took a Red Bull and poured this Red Bull into a water bottle so that we could have a closed container. And so it looks like someone peed in a bottle, the water bottle. So James, right, Rice Krispie treat, he takes a bite, no question. Coke, he takes a sip, no question. Twizzler takes a bite. Pretzels takes a bite. I hand him this bottle. I say, drink this. He looks at it and he says, what is this? Just like complete abrupt stop to the whole process. Like, what is this? Thinking, I'm sure that it was pee in a bottle,
Yeah, I was just checking.
as if we would do that to you. Um, no, it was Red Bull. You drank the Red Bull. We got moving again, right? So now it's mile 20, 21. Those are both just over 30 minutes. We're on the east side of Manhattan at this point. We're getting close to that marathon mark. Sun is coming up. You're feeling good. You're clipping off for mile 22, 23 are 39 minutes and 33 minutes, respectively, give or take a couple seconds. And what are you thinking at this point as we are now just a few miles away from the marathon mark in good time, mind you?
Yeah, so first, before that, I just want to say at that point, my friend Christine and my buddy Alex showed up. So shout out to them for coming through, like literally in the crack ass of dawn or whatever. They came, and that meant a lot to me for them to show up. So shout out to them. It was good to see people um, show up and support me. But then at that point, I just remember looking at everybody and just being like, "We did it. We're gonna do it." I didn't say we did it. I said we're gonna do it. I told you we're gonna do it. And I just had that kind of like little conversation with everybody. I wanted to get everybody's reaction because I knew we weren't done yet. Um, but I knew everybody could feel that we were about to do what I said we were going to do. And I just made it a point to say to everybody, like I told you, we were going to do it. And I kind of said that for me selfishly because, again, looking back to mile 7 on the Brooklyn Bridge, I was scared. I was nervous. I wasn't going to do it. And I ended up at that point we were there with like flying colors where we could have taken an hour off, you know. So that was it. It was a good moment for me to um, not have it accomplished yet and still enjoy those last few moments of like underdog status of I was doubted and nobody really believed me. Everyone kind of ripped me off. Everybody that I was friends with when they thought I was crazy and the moments where I was in college and I told people I'm going to bear crawl a marathon and post about it and it all kind of just was flashing through my mind in those miles and I was just like I fucking did it, you crazy son of a bitch, you actually did it, you're gonna do it.
So we got, let's say at this point, we got 2 miles left. Before we get there, I'm going to take us on a quick detour in terms of this conversation. We'll get right back to it. But a few things I don't want to lose sight of. One is this entire time we are passing people on the street, not so much overnight, but especially in the beginning and then upcoming, we will be. And people had a wide range of reactions. I mean, so someone barked at us. That was interesting. People were asking what was going on. We're raising money for mental health, athlete mental health awareness. People are asking, what's he doing? How far is he going? No way, that's crazy. Let's go, man. People calling you a savage. People of all different walks of life cheering you on, which is really cool. There was one funny moment that happened now at this point, 10 hours ago, but I want to highlight that I think is hilarious. This older woman was passing us on the street. She asked what was going on, and in passing, because you were booking it, someone said it's for mental health, not giving the whole story. And I think she thought it was for your mental health, and she said, "I hope it works."
Yeah.
Uh,
I remember someone telling me that and I was like that is hilarious, there's no way.
and so that happened. And then the other thing to note is that we're passing dogs too in the day, and these little New York City dogs, like with so much attitude. just are chomping at the bit, just barking at James as if he's some, big dog on the street, which I thought was hilarious. And at one point, a puppy kind of got away a little bit from the owner and jumped on you, and you played with it for a second, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, the dog trailed me for about like maybe like 15 yards and was like jumping all over my back. And I was like petting it. Um, it was a really cool moment. It was nice. But somebody I remember somebody yelled like puppy, like the stress relief or whatever, support dog, like emotional support dog or something. But yeah, it was I haven't done much training around dogs at the parks, and people usually bring their dogs. So um only thing I've crawled with is my dog. Sometimes like my mom will take her on a walk if we went around the neighborhood. Um, but yeah, it was cool. It was interesting to see. I mean, as much as people were also supportive, I had people pretend to kick me.
Mm,
Um, I had people yell some pretty messed up stuff.
mm,
But that's just New York. Believe it or not, I think more people than not actually moved out of the way for me, which I'm appreciative of. They didn't have to, and we were concerned about before hitting the stoplights because we were like, we're gonna probably lose some time letting cars pass, and there's not going to be a clear way. And then all I remember, I think I said it to you at one point. I was like, dude, we have not hit one red light. It has been just go, go, go. And I was waiting for an excuse to take a break because cars are going by. We obviously can't crawl. There was not one scenario where we had to wait at a red light. And it was just like, we
mm.
always got there and it was like, we only have 10 seconds to get across. You got to go. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to go. So we were lucky. We literally hit all just straight walkways.
And thank goodness we had Phil for many reasons, but there was one point where we were crossing and you were a little slow to get there when the light turned and the car started beeping and everybody just let it go. And Phil turned around and started yelling at this taxi driver and they were exchanging words. And, I thought, Phil started walking toward the taxi and we were like, come on, let's go. So that was all well and good, but let's go back now. So mile 22, 23, you're saying, we did it. We're here. This is it. I'm going for it. Great time at this point. Amazing time. We crawled miles 24 in 44 minutes and 42 seconds. 25 was 54 minutes and 44 seconds. We took a little bit of a break. Mile 26, we crawl in 56 minutes and 19 seconds. And then this is where we have zero point 0.2 miles left. Now we're on the east side of Manhattan at this point, and we are, I believe, on First Ave at this point, headed north. So, do you want to take us through those zero point 0.2 miles or anything before that leading up to the marathon mark?
Um, like I said, I just remember looking at everybody and say we're going to do it. Um, the 0.2 miles, I don't really remember. Um, it was a big moment for me.
Mm,
It was the 31, was I guess the disguise you could say, right? We found our way around it. But the kid in the beginning set out to bear crawl the marathon. So that meant more to me than the 31, really. The 31 was kind of just a way for me to pay some respect to Devin and what he did. But it was this whole thing, and I wrote it in my Instagram caption. We could talk all about records and all this stuff, and I'm very glad I did it in a better time, but it wasn't about that. I was just really very filled with emotion at that point. Just sitting point two away, knowing I had 2 hours to get 0.2 miles. It was really cool. It was really cool to just sit on top of that mountain, like we spoke about, um, just picture myself as the guy. I'm going to be that guy in 0.2 miles. So it was a very cool moment. The celebration we had, like once we got there, was a little. Everybody didn't really know how to react because we were like that was like a big accomplishment, but it wasn't the goal of the day.
mm.
So everyone was like not sure if we should celebrate or not. But yeah, it was a marathon. Literally, it was quite a marathon. It was a wave of emotions. The whole time was just. I remember it felt like it came in waves. It was 2 hours was extremely, extremely, extremely low, and 2 hours I was really, really high. The next 2 hours I was really, really low, and we kind of ended it on a really high note. And I think we like you'll probably agree with, we took advantage of that high too much, and I think the cookie crumbled, but it was bittersweet. It really was.
So I'm just pulling up the pacing one more time. So yes, I don't think anybody knew how to celebrate because we were there for the 31.07. That was when we ended, right? And I think the celebration and the ending were where people were kind of putting those two things together. So we celebrated a little bit. It was a little lackluster. But inside, I know how that made you feel. It was a big moment, hugs all the way around. And then it was, hey, we're way ahead of pace. It's light out, the sun's out, it's not as cold, it's not raining. Let's take this chance to change the shoes, change the shirt, wrap the hands again, eat some food, take some rest. And we stayed there for a while. Mile so 20, let's just get here. So mile 27 was our slowest mile. That was an hour and 14 minutes and 30 seconds. So we really we took our time there. And that was all well and good in the moment. And then we got back crawling. Now, do you remember how you felt when you started crawling again after that 26.2?
Terrible. I felt terrible. And I had that moment again where we're just like, now you're back in the fire. Celebration's over. You know, you're the same dude you were at 26.0. It didn't change when you got to 26.2. Everything's the same. And I like forgot that for a second when I accomplished what I accomplished. And then when I got back down, it just like immediately re-humbled me, where I was just like, shit, this is going to be another war. And I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So we were running around trying to find a place to go, and people were telling me to get the fuck out. So I mean, I don't blame him. I walked in with like my hands all taped up, and I probably looked crazy. We were on the Upper East Side at that point. It's a little bit better of an area. I went to like a Pilates studio. The lady freaked out. Dom was like, "He's bear crawling an ultra marathon." She was like, "Well, get out." um, so yeah, then ended up finding a place to go to the bathroom, and then um, yeah, we were off for that 27th mile.
Mhm.
But yeah, those last 5 miles were the most difficult of the whole day.
Yeah. So just for people listening also, while James was with Dom trying to find the bathroom, I was standing on the spot where James stopped. And that's where James came back to and started crawling again, just in case anybody was curious about that. So yeah, mile 27 again, an hour 14 minutes, which is very slow, especially when you compare it to the first mile of again 27 minutes and 39 seconds. So slow mile. Mile 28, 47:54. Mile 29, 54:44. Now, at this point, we're going up First Ave and we are starting to enter East Harlem. Now, I think behind the scenes, you probably didn't know this, James. Phil was probably he had a reason to question us to go all the way up into Harlem. Not because it's a terrible area during the day. I think we were safe the whole time. I never felt unsafe. I don't think anybody did. But we're going all the way up that way, and we had to cut back towards Central Park. So the plan was to go to 110th Street and then to cut west into Central Park. Now, mile, let's say 27, 28, 29, I realized you were really slowing down and hurting quite a bit. And we were not going to make it to 110th Street. And contrary to what you said in the beginning before we started the crawl at all, you said, I don't care how I get there, just get me there. You cared at this point, and you said, get me off this effing street to Central Park.
Yeah. Well, you said we were at 13th Street, right?
We were on First Ave,
First.
going north, and we were going to go west to Central Park at 110th Street, but you told me that around like 96th Street. So we had 14 blocks to go
Ah,
before we were going to
okay. See,
turn.
I didn't really understand that. I thought at the time we were going from 1 to 110, which was I couldn't digest in my head. That's why I wanted to get off the street, because I was like looking ahead like 110 blocks. No way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was kind of a mind game. So yeah, I do remember saying that to you, because all I remember was like, where the fuck is this park? So I kept saying in my head, I was just like, where is this
You
park?
said it
And
out loud a few times too.
yeah, yeah, I said a lot of stuff over the last mile that I went to bed that night and I wasn't proud of. Um, But yeah, I mean, I was just that just goes to show you how hard it was. It broke me physically, spiritually, mentally. I just was filled with doubt, fear, all of them, every emotion. I was overwhelmed. It was slow, I'm sure everyone was tired at that point. I was tired. And I just wanted it to be over. And I think that's where I went wrong was I was trying to rush the miles away. And it snowballed. But yeah, it was those were those were miserable.
So it was funny because when you said you wanted to get to the park, I looked at Ryan and Ryan looked at me with kind of a concerned look on his face. And because at this point, I had essentially handed over the navigation completely to him. And I said, "How far is it to the park?" And he brought his little book over, and we looked at it together, and we looked at our phones. And it was, if I'm counting correctly now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 blocks to get to the park. I think at the in the moment before I fully understood that, I said it's like 3 blocks to you, which was a mistake, an honest mistake. But I think that might have played into the fact that it felt really long to you because it was a lot longer than I said it was. um, but so anyway, we're crawling that way, and so say mile 29, and that's where I decided I needed to get down and crawl with you for a little bit. And so, handed off my backpack, got down on the ground, started crawling with you. It's kind of funny because as soon as I started crawling with you, some guy shouted, "How long have they been going for?"
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so I think I crawled about 0.2 miles with you. We went straight, no stopping. And I know that was, not terribly taxing for me. It wasn't easy. I can only imagine how hard it was for you. But what was going through your mind at that moment when I crawled with you for that, 0.2 miles?
You're not going to like this answer.
That's okay.
But I was so mad at everybody there just because I was just like, where are we? Where the fuck is this park? And when everyone started to get down to crawl with me, I was like, I'm gonna make these fuckers suffer. I was like, they're going to feel what this feels like. I was like, I am going to crawl for as long as I can so they feel what I'm feeling and they get it. And I remember I crawled and I was like, I'm dead set on crawling for as long as I can. Like if I have to go a full mile, like I'm going as fast as I can and I'm just gonna all out. And I did it and I felt like 10 minutes. And I stood up and I looked at Alex and was like, how far did we go? And he was like 0.03. And I was like, no fucking way. And I almost lost my shit because I was like, there's no way we only went that far. But that was going through my mind. I was like, these
Mhm.
people are gonna feel exactly what I feel right now.
I love that, dude. I knew you were not happy. You were not a happy camper in general
Yeah.
at that point in time. Um, and so it was funny. I got down, I crawled. Mike crawled with you.
Yeah.
I think your step niece crawled with you for a while. Your mom, your brother, your sister, Phil
Yeah.
crawled with you. Dom crawled with you. I think everybody took turns, right? And
Yeah.
meanwhile, going through your head, you're like, I'm gonna make these people suffer. And
Yeah.
so, all right, so mile 28 was 47:54. Mile 29, 54:44. So this is where we get to the park.
Yeah.
So now we're in Central Park. Um, Change of scenery. How do you feel at this moment, knowing that you have about, let's say, 2 miles and change left?
Terrible. Still terrible. Thinking that I had 2 miles left. 2 miles felt like the whole 31 when I first started. Honestly, probably even worse. I was just broken at that point. Um, I just was wishing it away. Looking back now, I wish I could have tried to be a little more present and maybe wish I wasn't so obsessed with the sub 24 and wish maybe I took about 10 minutes just to regather my thoughts and just try and center myself a little bit. But I just was trying to rush it away. I was just trying to just get there, get there, get there, and it just made it 10 times worse. But I remember getting into the park, and it was kind of frightening because I remember Devin talking about the hills, and how brutal they were, and they lived up to the hype. That's for sure. Um, but yeah, I remember everyone yelling like it's around the corner, it's around the corner, and like around the corner came, and there was another around the corner, and I was like, is this fucking place even real? Like, where are we going? Like, is it even real? Um, Yeah, but yeah, at that point it was I was over it.
So from my perspective, I was I felt for you because at this point it almost felt like either the GPS was lying to us,
Yeah.
and things were going slower than or not as far as they actually were, or you were just fatigued and we were in some kind of denial and we didn't understand that you were actually crawling a lot slower than we had hoped or thought. And maybe it was some kind of combination of the both, but whatever it was, time was going so slow,
Oh,
distance was not moving, and I'm the one holding the phone watching this thing, watching you pour your heart out on the pavement in Central Park, watching zero point zero 0.01 miles, zero point zero 0.01 miles. You look up thinking you just did a quarter of a mile, and me
yep.
having to tell you it was zero point zero 0.02 or it's zero point zero 0.05, and watching the pain and the disappointment and the frustration and every single emotion on your face to have you get back down and crawl again. And at one point, and I don't remember where in Central Park this was, we met up with another group of people you knew, and that's when Richie crawled with you,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. And there's two conversations I remember having, and two conversations I'm very thankful for now. One was um you kind of giving me, and we spoke about this before, where I kind of gave you full permission to just like lay it on me. Where I was just like, you asked me like, if you're behind, you want me to tell you, and I was just like, just be dead honest. Tell me if I'm behind, tell me if I'm ahead. Like, we need to get this thing done, communicate. You told me, you were just like, well, there's two ways we can look at this. The GPS is either lying to us and we can make excuses, or we're not going to stop until that thing says fucking 31.07. So if either it's lying to us or it's not, we have no choice. And I was like, amen, you're right. I hate to admit that you're right, but you are. So let's do it. And then my buddy Richie crawled with me, and at one point I stopped and I was just defeated, exhausted. And all during my training, for months and months, we would always joke around, and he would say, what would you trade to be on the last, to just have it over with, just be fast forward to the last mile of your crawl, just have it over with. I said, no, that last mile is for me. I earned that. That was always my answer. I said, I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't give up that experiencing that last mile. And he was like, say it. Well, what did you say? And I said, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And he was like, well, you're fucking living it. So stop wishing it away. Like, get this thing done. And I was just like, damn fucking God, you guys are right, man. So we crawled and I bitched and I moaned, and we got there.
Yeah, man. So for people listening, mile 29 was 54 minutes and 44 seconds. Mile 30 was 55 minutes and 53 seconds. Now, before I want to talk about a couple things. One thing, Ryan and I had no idea what to expect in Central Park, right? You look in on a map and it's a bunch of dotted trails and green and blue for water, and you have no idea. We had no idea. So, anyway, we get in Central Park and James is standing up and he's like, I don't see the fountain. He's like, we're going to finish at Bethesda Fountain. He's like, I don't see a fountain anywhere. And I'm like, oh gosh, he's not happy. So I'm talking to Ryan. I'm like, how do we get to the fountain in the straightest shot possible? And Ryan's like, well, we got to go around this pond or we got to take this. And I'm like, no, that's going to be too long. Like, we're going to. And so eventually we just pick a path. And little did we know when we picked that path, James had to crawl down a flight of stairs, big flight of stairs at mile 30.5, like 30 of this bear crawl, and then up another flight of stairs. And everybody was like, are you serious? You can't find another way. And we're like already there. And while we're all just like talking about it, James is just going down the stairs.
Yeah,
I felt bad for you, man.
no, I mean, that's what it was all about. I was not going to go down that thing backwards or sideways. I was going down forward. I think more people were concerned that I was just going to give out and like fall down the stairs. Like Richie was crawling next to me. He was super fresh and he went down sideways, and I'm
Yeah.
doing pretty much a handstand going down. Um, but you believe it or not, the stairs kind of, they add an element to it where it's at least some entertainment. Um, Yeah, there's the part of the video where I'm on the stairs. Uphill, up the stairs is easy. It's like
Mhm.
going up the stairs as a kid. It's just like you're just walking up the stairs. So I would have done. I would have wished the whole last mile was upstairs,
Yeah.
but down was tough.
So, all right. So we get down the stairs now, home stretch. Now, GPS again is telling me we have a little over a mile left. At this point, we're on a road that goes through Central Park. Bikers, runners, we're in the walking lane. And throughout this whole crawl, Brooklyn Bridge, middle of the night, raining, I hadn't seen you in the mood that you were in the whole time. Like it was what I thought in my mind was like the make or break. Like we're gonna get there, we're not. And it wasn't a matter of you were gonna finish. I knew you were gonna finish, but the clock was kind of ticking and things were going super slow. And you were, yeah, I don't would you say defeated is a word?
Absolutely. Totally lost all perspective, and um, yeah, I was out of the count, out for the count. I was definitely defeated.
So you're standing at that spot. Phil, your stepfather, had crawled with you on and off for a while, but at this point, you're by yourself. And I knew in my head that you were going to finish this crawl alone. Um, you started, right? We're a team, right? Everybody's around you, but this is your crawl. And I want you to know that now. I never intended to finish that crawl with you. But as a coach and as someone who cares deeply about you as a person, I felt like I needed to be in the trenches with you to push you to get you closer to the finish. And so, yeah, I gave my backpack away. I took my sweatshirt off. I got the gloves from Richie, which honestly didn't really help because there were holes in all the fingers. And so I just crawled with you for pretty much a mile. And there were two thoughts going through my head. I didn't say either of these out loud. One was, like, Joe, you cannot stop before James stops. Like no matter how much this no matter how much this hurts right now, like your glutes, your quads, your shoulders, your hands, like you cannot stop until he takes a break. And then my second thought was like, James, stop, take a break, man. Like, come on, stop. I'm dying here. That mile crushed me. Like I woke up the next day and I felt like I was in a car accident after. So we'll talk about how you felt after, but yeah, so we crawled. I was communicating here and there with Alex. Alex went ahead, found the point where it actually was 31.07 from where we were. So we knew we had to get to this crosswalk and go off of that road. Crawled with you there, crawled with you a little bit up that road, and then I asked you. I said, "Do you want to finish this alone?" And you nodded yes. No words. You just nodded yes. Step back. At that point, you had about 0.15 left. And everybody was trying to figure out when do we start clapping for him, because like 0.15 still takes a while. And so
Yeah.
I didn't want people clapping for 10 minutes as you crawled. So we waited until you had 0.07 left. And what was going through your mind? Well, actually, I'm curious, man. What was going through your mind when I was crawling with you for that stretch? And then what was going through your mind when you knew you had 0.07 left?
Um, when you were crawling with me again, I was just maybe I did maybe I said I'm jumbling the miles here. Um, but I was trying to make everyone suffer. I really was. I was just like, you know what, it'll get me there faster and they'll feel exactly what I feel. Um, but yeah, I don't really remember. All I remember kept saying to myself is just like, you never have to fucking do this again. You're never gonna do this again. You're never gonna have to do this again. I was like, point whatever, never do this again. Like I literally was going through the days of the week in my head saying, 0.15 and you don't have to wake up on Monday and train. 0.15, you don't have to wake up on Tuesday and train. 0.15, you don't have to wake up on Wednesday. And I just kept saying it and saying, never have to do this again, never have to do this again. And then you asked me, and then I nodded, yeah. And then the rest was just that part went fast, thank God, right? Like the last 0.07 went fast.
And so to picture it for everybody, I'm standing in front of James, backpedaling with my phone as close to him as I can. Everybody else is behind me and kind of around the sides of James. I'm counting down 0.06, 0.05, 0.03, 0.02, 0.01. And he hits the mark. I stop the phone. We kind of just all bum rush James, and
Yeah.
it's hugs, it's emotion, and I gotta be honest, man. Your brother Torin hugged you like the biggest hug I'd seen in a while, and
Yeah.
sobbing, said something to the effect of like, "I never doubted you for a second. I knew you would do this, man." And I was standing maybe 5, 10 feet away and I lost it, man. I just tears were just coming down my face. And you collapsed on the ground after that. And then you got back up, you looked up and you saw me and you stood up. Um, and I gave you a hug and I told you I was proud of you. And I told you I love you. You said the same and you went on to just embrace everybody there. And what was that part like for you?
Man, I was just so overwhelmed with like, I'm done. I'm done. That was it. I couldn't really comprehend. I mean, like going back and watching the video of my brother reacting like that, like I'm surprised I didn't cry. I mean, you guys heard how emotional I got when I was talking about, not quitting, so he couldn't see that he wouldn't see something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I still haven't really processed it all. I'm just it was unbelievable to just hear the words that everyone was saying to me and um to finally be at that point that I've suffered so hard for and sacrificed so much for was everything. It was the best moment of my life. It really was. It was incredible.
So you got stung by a bee a few minutes after you finished.
Yeah, I was laying down and I got stung by a bee.
Um, and but
Uh,
to rewind, I mean, I think I'm almost I wasn't expecting you to say that you wanted to make everybody suffer, but at the same time, like I think that's what I appreciated about crawling with you at the end was just like, and the whole thing, to be honest, like, your level of suffering was a lot different than everybody else's level of suffering, but you know, to be sleep deprived, walking through the streets of New York City, like just doing whatever needed to be done to get you to the finish for everybody there was a form
yeah,
of suffering. And that shared suffering, whether it was crawling on the ground next to you for somebody, whether it was massaging your back when you were tired, whether it was getting you food, whatever it was, that shared suffering is so powerful. And I think that's part of the reason that I got really emotional is because like how much closer can you get to a group of people than to go through something so hard with them? And that was one of my big takeaways.
100%. And I think one of the things we spoke about before was it was going to be uncomfortable for everybody at some point. Like you said, we've all never spent that much time together. Um, but we're all people who were just willing to be uncomfortable for the greater good. And everybody swallowed their pride at certain points. And, I beat you guys up a little bit. I apologize. Hopefully you guys can forgive me. But everyone just, whether it was Mike with the Band-Aid or people, I'm like biting their fingers off because they're hand feeding me because I have the gloves on, or massaging me or anything. Everybody just got over the uncomfortableness of it and stayed awake and fought their own battle to get me to the finish line. So I'm forever grateful for everybody. Um, Everybody there is like my family, stamped and solidified. Um, yeah, it's a thing of beauty. It's something that I never really thought I could create. I never thought I was worth creating. Um, I never thought people would want to create that around me, which is the really cool part. Um, because the fact that I was able to give people an opportunity to even um, be a part of something like that was is I never ever thought that would be me.
Yeah. I could imagine your answer to this, but I would relive it. Would you relive it?
No, I'm good with once. I would relive it if one of you guys did
I was actually thinking I would no,
it.
just kidding. After seeing so like this is one of the things, right? People when I came home, I told all my clients about this, told my family about this. I came home, they asked how it was. And the one image I just couldn't get out of my head wasn't one specific moment, but it was this repeated image of you on your knees. on your forearms with your head on the ground, no matter where we were, Times Square, Lower East Side, Brooklyn, Central Park, shaking your head side to side in your own mind, and me trying to say, James, what do you need? Like, James, let's go. Like, James, tell me something, and not getting any response, and just seeing a grown man on the cold hard pavement suffering, and then getting back up and going again. And yeah, I mean, I have the chills. I told people, and I'll tell you this, I've never in my life seen a display of human grit and willpower and endurance up close and personal like I saw last weekend. And I'm just forever grateful for you for showing me that and letting me be part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, thank you guys. And for anyone listening, I this will be an interesting perspective. Before I tell the perspective, I never saw myself as that person that was just going to do that. I really didn't, and I know you can attest to that. At least when we first started speaking. But one of the conversations I had with Dom Fusco the night before, when I was just in the zone and locked in, I talk about this idea of a second life, right? Like after college, I have this second life, and that person, the person that you just described, was not supposed to be me. If you would have told me that when I was in college at a party 4 years ago, I would have been like, there's absolutely no way. That guy's out of his mind. That dude you just described was not supposed to be me. I was not supposed to be the guy who did this, but I did it. And I couldn't have been here without people like you, who just poured into me for the past 16 months. People who, like you and my family, who just listen to the idea of a crazy kid that's going to bear crawl 31 miles and make something out of it, um, enough to let him not work, and just not be normal. And nothing about this past year was normal. None of you ever questioned it for a second. And I'm forever grateful for that, because as much as I wanted to become this kid, I never could have became this kid if you guys didn't allow me to, and give me the time to become that kid. So thank you.
Of course, man. I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else and wouldn't have wanted to do that with anyone else. And I also know that this is only the beginning. And we've tossed around ideas before the crawl. I don't know what's next. I'll ask you in a second, but what's the biggest takeaway? Just if you had to sum it up into one thing for people listening, which I'm sure is really hard.
From the crawl or the whole thing?
You can give me both or whatever comes to mind, whatever you want.
Um, I'll start with the crawl. There's always more to give. Um, that's my biggest takeaway. Um, there's always a way out. There's always a way around. And when you think you're done, you're not. You just don't have the right way through. Um, Persistence wins, and the guy who doesn't go away is the guy who wins. And I think that was just a prime example of that. I was not going away, and at some point, my mind and my body just had to give in. Um, and you can't do that shit alone. That's probably the biggest one. There was no way in hell I could have done that shit alone. Absolutely not. Um, you want to do something like that, you want to do something significant, it's not about you. And you need to find people that are going to pour into you and help you achieve that. Because if you think you're going to do it alone, you're not. Um, it would have been a very, very miserable day if I tried to do that alone. And I wouldn't want to. You don't want to do it alone. So don't, you might, yeah, it seems cool. You could be tough. You did it alone. You don't want to do it alone. I think I said this before on my Instagram too. It's about the people that you can share the accomplishments with. And when I look back on this in a couple of years, it's going to be, the moments of, you guys doing everything that you did for me, to get me to that finish line, not about what I achieved, but what I created amongst that achievement. And then in terms of the whole process, um, I think the best thing I can think of you need to be unbalanced. And I think people don't give that enough credit. Um, Balance is something that you have to achieve, but you don't achieve balanced by being balanced, if that makes sense. I'm 23 years old, and I think a lot of young people now talk about balance, but what the fuck are we balancing? What was I balancing before? It was a bunch of stuff that was insignificant. It wasn't helping me in any way. And I had to just lock myself in my way and just be unbalanced and know what it felt like to sacrifice everything and know what it felt like to believe in myself because I sacrificed so much, um, and had nothing else besides my vision of completing this goal. And those were the moments that built exactly what was displayed on in that 24-hour period. And then, I'm sure that's going to lead into what's next for me. And it's to find a little bit more balance. And also, give back to every single person that gave to me in that 16-month window. And I have a list. I have it's not a long list, but it's a good list. And every single person on that list has, one phone call away and I'm there, for whatever they need over the next year. I don't want anything to be about me. A lot was focused, a lot of sacrifices were made to make sure I got to my goal. And I'd be so very selfish to try and do that again immediately. I want to give back to everybody else that has given to me. So that's going to be my focus. I think, um, here's another great lesson that I've learned, is eventually uncomfortable becomes comfortable. Bear crawling a mile becomes comfortable. Running 5 miles becomes comfortable. What's uncomfortable now will be learning how to support other people, going out of my way to, Joe Rinaldi texts me every Monday at 6 a.m. That's going to be uncomfortable for me because I've had so many people support me. I haven't had to support many other people. What's going to be uncomfortable is picking up that phone and asking people if they need my help. That's uncomfortable. Not going out and doing another physical feat. That's comfortable. Being in this zone is comfortable. What's uncomfortable is now trying to go out and build relationships, grow my brand and speak on, not having to post about a bear crawl, figure out what's next in that avenue. That's uncomfortable. So eventually physical becomes comfortable and you have to be willing to step outside those boundaries. So that's pretty much what's next for me.
That's beautiful, James. And you know, I don't have much to add. I think the one thing that I left out that I would like to add that I thought was just a cool moment was after you hit the 31.07, after the celebration, after the bee sting, you stood up and I said to you, "Do you want the data?" And I showed you my phone with the screen on it with the numbers. And you said, "Nah," you didn't hesitate. You said, "Nah, man, I'm good." And you pounded your chest and you said, "It's in here."
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't need it. Um, I don't think I think I said I don't need it. I lived it,
Yeah.
or something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, 24 hours I'll never forget.
Yeah. Any wise words to anybody who wants to go out and break either of the records that you set?
I'll coach you. Let me know. I'll help you if you do. I tried to make my page as oriented as I could. I already said I hated making content, so it's not great, but um, I tried to think of it from a perspective as if, a kid's going to look at my page and want to beat me. Could he do it? Um, I think I looked at Devin and kind of took from what he did, and I kind of made my own way. And I think that was the most beautiful part is I didn't have much resource to pull from. And that was kind of the part that was daunting at times, but also freeing at times where I didn't know what to do, but also nobody could tell me what to do. So I didn't have the stress of, as say marathon runners do, where they know they need to hit these certain marks. It was kind of what I felt was right. But yeah, the next person that does it, hit me up. I'll help you.
All right, a few last things, and then we'll wrap this up. This is by far the longest podcast I've ever recorded. So if people are still listening, thank you. Last couple points. There's a picture of us, probably like 3 a.m. It's raining. We're on a random sidewalk in New York City. You're crouched down on the ground, hands taped, hood up. My hand is kind of near your shoulder, and I'm looking ahead. I've got the time on my phone, and I think that picture is really special to me because of the moments that we got to share throughout the crawl, the moments we've gotten to share throughout the past 16 months. And also, it is kind of the perfect embodiment of what I see coaching as. And James, I can see you being a great coach for a lot of people someday. And it's being being there with somebody. It's raining out, it's 3 a.m., you're in the middle of New York City, and you're with that person because you believe in them, and you don't have to say anything, but you're just there. And that picture will always be special to me. This relationship will always be special to me. This event will always be special to me, and this podcast will always be special to me. So that's one thing. On kind of an interesting note, I'm curious what you felt after the crawl. You texted me. I would pull it up, but I think I remember it. I said, "How are you feeling?" And you said, "Everything's swollen, and I can't stand." With a laughing emoji.
Yeah.
What did it feel like the day after the crawl?
It was really tough to get out of bed. I couldn't straighten my legs. It took me about a day and a half to be able to stand up on my own. I couldn't stand up on my own. I had people picking me up. I was on crutches for about a day. Um, I couldn't move my fingers. I couldn't really hold anything. Um, yeah, my my toes, my fingers, I can't feel. Um, had a bad headache for like 2 days. I think it's just from the tension in my neck, but it literally felt like I got kicked, like the shit kicked out of me, by like 10 dudes. But it's one of those things that it's just I earned that feeling, and it's a feeling that I might never be able to experience again. I don't know if anything will beat me up that bad again. Maybe, but not quite like that. Bear crawling is a unique and special thing. So I loved it. I loved walking around on crutches and people asking, and I think a lot of us do those types of things for that reason, for that feeling, to know that we um, pushed ourselves to that point. But yeah, even my hands are freaking were just open wounds. They're starting to
Show the
callus.
camera if you can, because I'll make this video as well. Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're that's pretty good. They're starting to harden, but before they were just like wide open. Um, Windburn. I don't know if you had bad windburn, did you?
No, but my lips will probably be chapped for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, my lips are chapped too, but I had bad windburn. And actually, I don't know if you remember, I think you also said during the last couple miles, you were like, keep making those noises. My eyes were bloodshot. I was holding my breath, just trying to just get enough to just keep going. And I kept like, ugh, like just grudging. And um, yeah, my eyes, I woke up the next morning, they were beet red. So I think I would like popped a couple of blood vessels or something. But yeah, it was a great pain.
Yeah, pain is a privilege, as it goes.
Absolutely.
All right. So last two things. One, through all this, you were raising money for athlete mental health awareness. People can donate through the link in your Instagram bio. And I would encourage anybody listening to this podcast, anybody watching the YouTube version of this, to go and do that. It's an amazing cause. James put himself through a ridiculous 24 hours to help people understand that they're not alone and that they can get through what they're going through. So if you can support him in that way and support others in that way, that would be awesome. And then the last thing, James, if people want to follow along, people want to ask you questions, if they want to connect and see what's next, where should they do that?
If you're gonna shoot me a message through Instagram. That's I'm always on there. That's like my main platform. Um, if you guys want to try to relive what we relived in that 24 hours, there will be a YouTube video coming out in the next 2 weeks. That's going to have all the breaks, all the interactions, all the discussions, the nitty gritty. You name it, it's in there. It's going to be a great one. I'm excited to see that. So if you guys want to, if you listen to this podcast and you kind of want to relive that story, go do that in a visual form on YouTube. Um, I'm also on TikTok. I really, like I said, I don't know where my content's going to go. I don't know where I'm going to show up, but I'll definitely be on those three. So that's where you can get to me.
Awesome. James, I don't know how to end this. This obviously isn't the end of our relationship. And I'll actually talk to you tomorrow on your birthday. Um,
Yep.
so I guess I could just say I'll see you then. But thank you. Thank you again for this conversation, this experience, this journey, and for the shared suffering. It really means a lot.
No, thank you for being in the fire with me, man. Like I said, I really couldn't have been here without you. And shameless plug, if you don't coach with Joe, coach with Jay.
I appreciate that, man.
Crawl a marathon.
No, if you want a bear crawl marathon, coach with James. If you want to do anything else, coach with me. Um,
Exactly.
all right,
There you go.
James. Thank you again, man.
Of course. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.